Hey guys, we're back working on the rusty Cushman project, and as I mentioned in a handful of videos, we're just trying to get forward progress going on this and keep moving and working towards making it nicer every time that we touch it. So the last time what we did was we worked on cleaning up the front headlight. It looks awesome. It actually looks way nicer than the rest of the scooter, but that just gives me some inspiration to keep moving. So while we're waiting on the last couple of parts, which is the wheel, the tire, and the clutch and some of those parts to actually make it move, we're going to work on just fixing the next thing that is damaged on the scooter, and that is this rear trunk lid here. Common with these trunk lids, people would sit on them and dent them in, and then over time the damage would get worse and worse. And in this case, we actually even have a tear where the metal started to tear from when somebody was sitting or putting a load on the back of this. So we're going to take this trunk lid off, get it blasted and cleaned up, then we're going to show you guys how to repair it and get the shape back in without having to throw away the panel and make a new one. All right, so we got the deck lid and the body all flipped up here so we can work on it. What I found is that this hinge is actually spot welded to the body, so we need to actually locate the spot welds and get this whole deck lid off so that we can work it and get it cleaned up really nicely. So what I like to do when I'm trying to locate spot welds, especially on something like this that's just like covered in surface rust and you can't find it, I found that the spot welds are usually just a little bit low from the factory when they pinch it together and do the resistance welding. For the spot welds, it actually makes the panel just a little low in those areas. So if you take a sander, like here I'm using a little 2-inch sander with a mini flap disc, I'll go over the area lightly and knock down some of the rust, and you'll see that there'll be low spots that actually show up. And those low spots are where you can start aiming to do your spot weld drill bit and take those spot welds out. So it's just a quick, easy way to find the spot welds without having to try and fish around and pry on the metal too much. All right, so we got the deck lid off, and you can really see how dented in this thing is. It's got a big belly in the panel here. So before I start hammering on it with my hammers and getting it all smoothed out, we need to get all this rust off. On this piece, I think it's going to be a little easier just to throw it in the blast cabinet. So kind of like we did with the headlight, we're going to keep our blaster nozzle far away and keep moving so we don't warp the panel, but take all the rust off. All right, so I spent a few minutes stripping all the major flaky rust off of this, and I focused mainly on this top section where we're going to be working the most to get it down to bare metal with the blaster. Later on in the project, we're going to be stripping the whole entire scooter with the blaster and get nice, fresh, clean metal before we start doing body work. What I'm going to be doing now is just flipping this over and working with the sandbag and one of these bossy mallets to try and reverse the damage that's happened in here. See if we can get the shape back up and roughed in, and then we can work on fixing that the torn area in the metal there. All right, so the idea with doing this is that we're trying to get the rough shape back into the panel. We're not necessarily focused on every little tiny dent and making this perfect. At this point, we're just trying to get going in the right direction. So I started focusing on the area where it was torn, raising that back up because this whole area in here was sunken really bad. Once I started getting that back up, I started kind of working my way down the panel where the residual damage had occurred, where it was just a little bit less denting. We started raising all that back up, and you could see as we were hammering on it, just kind of started popping out and relieving back to its original shape that it had when it was new. So now we got the rough shape back into it. We can work on fixing that crack there with the welder, and then we can continue to just refine the shape and get it just a little bit closer so that at least now it'll fit the scooter a little better. Okay, so as we're working this, I started to see some daylight coming through, and you guys can see, using the modular light here, there's some, it's gotten thin where it ripped. It actually ripped and was torn. It's actually thin down into here, so if we tried to just zap it with the welder, it would start blowing through and opening a hole up. So we're going to have to probably cut down into there to get some of this damage repaired. But that's if you see those pinholes, you got to fix them. All right, so we got the deck lid all welded up and repaired. I ended up using the TIG welder in this instance because as you start learning how to work with this stuff, TIG welding is a little easier to work a weld, and because we needed to hammer and dolly and work this more to get the shape back in, TIG weld's going to allow us a little more flexibility with that. So I got the shape all back in, it's roughed in, and again, we're just trying to keep forward movement, so this is a big improvement. This was once all caved in, now it kind of flows with the shape of the scooter, and it looks awesome. We're going to be blasting this whole entire scooter later on in the project, so all this is going to look really awesome. Hopefully next time we're going to have all the parts in stock that we ordered, and we can start working on getting the rear wheel mocked up, the chain, all that stuff, and maybe really soon start it up and drive it around the garage, which would be awesome. So, all right, so that's all we have for this one. To learn more about the tools that I used in this video, you could click the link down below, or you can visit eastwood.com to get all the tools you need to do the job right.